Year 1976, June 27th, an Air France Airbus A300 took off as usual from Tel Aviv Airport in Israel. 248 passengers and 12 flight crew members. That's all there was on board. The time was 12:30 p.m. The plane was flying quietly. Suddenly, several people jumped up from various seats on the plane.
They said they had hijacked the plane and demanded that it go the way they wanted. They were members of a Palestinian terrorist organization. If they did not obey, they would destroy the plane. With no other choice, the pilot obeyed the terrorists. As per the terrorists' instructions, the plane was diverted to Benghazi, Libya. The goal was to refuel. The plane took off from Benghazi 7 hours later. This time the target was Entebbe Airport in Uganda. The plane landed at Entebbe Airport at 3:15 a.m. More militants joined the raiders there. The Palestinian militants were supported by the then Ugandan ruler Idi Amin. The Palestinian authorities put forward a condition for the release of the passengers. The 40 Palestinians held captive by Israel must be released. The 13 others held captive in various countries including Kenya, France, and Switzerland must also be released. If the demands are not met, all the passengers will be killed on June 1st. This was the ultimatum. Israel learned that the terrorists had hijacked the plane. They began to try to negotiate with the ranchis. Idi Amin, who had supported the terrorists, was the mediator. The passengers and crew had already been moved to the transit hall of Entebbe Airport. The terrorists freed everyone except the Israelis and Jews. Israel informed the terrorists that it was ready for negotiations and would consider their demands. They also requested time until July 4th. However, in the meantime, Israel was secretly planning another plan, Operation Thunderbolt, a commando operation to rescue the hostages. The preparations for this were being carried out under the leadership of the Israeli spy agency, Mossad. The terminal that housed the hostages at Entebbe Airport was built by an Israeli company. Mossad organized the plan of that terminal from them. Later, the commandos began training by building a model of it. In addition, they captured those released by the terrorists and gathered enough information. But there was one problem. If they wanted to go all the way to Uganda and return to Israel, they would have to refuel the plane somewhere in between. Kenya, which is close to Uganda, helped Israel in this regard. Israel obtained permission to land and refuel the planes at the airport in Nairobi and set up a temporary hospital there for those injured during the rescue mission. July 3rd, before the government could say okay, for C-130 Hercules aircraft carrying commandos took off from Israel that afternoon. The planes flew as low as possible to avoid being detected by other countries' radars. 2 Boeing aircraft followed. The first plane landed at Entebbe Airport at 11:01 p.m., 1 minute later than planned. Idi Amin was on a flight at the time. Airport officials and others initially thought it was his plane. Immediately after landing, the cargo doors of the plane opened. A black Mercedes-Benz emerged from it. Land Rovers followed. It sped towards the area where the hostages and terrorists were. This was a ploy to mislead the Ugandan soldiers that it was Idi Amin. An airport security guard suddenly became suspicious when he saw a car speeding through the airport. Idi Amin had recently bought a white Benz. This was a black Benz. He stopped the vehicle. The next moment, Israeli commandos shot him down. The commandos who entered the building shouted in Hebrew so that the hostages could understand, "Get down on the ground." Then there was a fierce gun battle. All the terrorists were killed. By this time, the remaining planes had also landed. There were about 100 people in the Israeli mission. One of the 2 Boeings landed in Nairobi. The other was circling over Entebbe Airport. The Israeli planes completed the mission in barely an hour and took off from Ugandan soil. Before that, the Ugandan planes at the airport were destroyed. During that daring rescue mission, 3 of the 106 hostages were killed. And so was the officer named Jonathan Netanyahu, who led the mission. Dora Bloch was an Israeli-British woman among the hostages. She was hospitalized by the terrorists due to her physical condition. Therefore, the commandos were unable to save her. Later, Amin brutally murdered Dora Bloch.